and in particular for this one, I have to say, because we know, those of us who have been working with Syria, that the fate of the detainees and the disappeared is perhaps the most painful issue of all that the people of Syria have to deal with and suffer with. And I'm very pleased, therefore, to the SNC office and to Hind and Ablatif in particular for having organized this meeting and allowing us to, and reminding us of this aspect, which is, as I said, perhaps the most important one of all, and it very usefully enlightens, enriches, and contributes to the preparations for the conference, and we're really very grateful. Having said all of this, I will not now make a long statement. I just wanted to set a little bit the context for this meeting and why we feel it's an important discussion, and we are very much attached here in Brussels to this conference, the Brussels conference on Syria. As I said, it's the 6th time. There are many other things happening in the world. For once, we have more trouble in Europe, I think you can say, than what we see in the Middle East, but we don't want to lose focus. We want to keep a strong focus on Syria, on the Syrian people, on our commitment to continue helping them, and on our wish and our push for a political solution to the conflict in Syria, which is still not over, unfortunately, but still continues. And as we know, the situation in Syria is not getting better, it's rather getting worse. And it's important, therefore, that we keep focusing. So thank you all for joining us and for having organized this meeting. We're very grateful. And for some introductory works and also with our thanks and appreciation warmly, I'm happy to give the floor to Hind Kabawat, the Deputy Head of the Syrian Negotiations Commission's office in Geneva. So Hind, please.
Yeah, thank you, Ambassador Karl, and hello everybody from sunny Geneva. And of course, on behalf of my ambassador, the SNC Geneva team, and the SNC leaders and members, we would like to welcome you and thank you all for being with us today. I want to take this opportunity to thank the EU and Germany for all their constant support for us. It goes without saying that accountability and detainees files are the most important in the Syrian conflict, as millions of families are affected by the loss of their loved ones. Today, we will be listening to the voice of women who were either being detained or lost their dear one. From mid of March 2011, people took the street from different religious and ethnic backgrounds demanding freedom. The Syrian regime always tries to turn things around. For example, tell the world that it is the protector of minorities and to hide its crime committed against all the Syrian people opposing dictatorship. The Assad crimes are against all free voices, secular and democratic people who aspire to have a better Syria, Syria for all. A special salute today for Dr. Rania Abbasi and her 6 children. The youngest was 6 months old, and her secretary Majdoline Qadi, who all have been detained since 2013. We have so far heard nothing about them. It is an honor to mention that this event is dedicated to all the Syrian women who are in prison and our sisters, the survivors. This event is as well dedicated to all the mothers and daughters who are waiting to know the destiny of their children. To the sons and daughters who are waiting to know the whereabouts of their parents. My 4 colleagues now will be delivering their speeches, and then my very good colleagues and sister Elise Mufarrij, the head of the SNC Detainees Committee, will be the last in this session to present the recommendations and the way moving forward. Back to you, Ambassador Karl.
Thank you very much, Hind. And indeed, we have a very impressive panel of speakers today, and I will give them the floor, introduce them briefly. But before that, I just want to tell all of you that you have interpretation into English and Arabic, so you're free to choose between the two languages. And for those of you who need interpretation, you find the button at the bottom of your screen. So first speaker this afternoon is Malaka Taha, who is a human rights activist from Azaz in Syria. She graduated from Aleppo University. She's a class teacher. She's a board member of the League of Survivors and a volunteer for the Women Empowerment Unit. Malaka, please, you have the floor.
مساء الخير. أنا ملكة طه، ناجية من معتقلات لنظام الأسد ومعلمة حالياً في الشمال السوري. 60 يوم مروا من الاعتقال كأنهم 60 سنة مروا علي، وأنا بعيدة عن أهلي ومحرومة من أبسط حقوقي، مورس معنا كل أشكال التعذيب النفسي. كانوا ينادونا بأبشع الكلام وأبشع الألقاب، وكمان يعذبوا الرجال أمامنا، وبظروف كانت كتير سيئة صحياً ونفسياً. كنت أحس إنه أنا بعيش الموت كل لحظة، الموت اللي كنت أتمناه لحتى أخلص من الظلم والقهر. طبعاً أنا ما كنت الوحيدة، كان في كتير نساء وكتير رجال دخلوا ظلم وعاشوا مأساة ومعاناة ما بتنوصف، بس لأنهم فكروا بالتغيير. منهم كانوا معتقلي رأي، وأنا كنت وحدة منهم، وكان كتير معتقلين ومعتقلات بس لأنه إلهم أقارب معارضين للنظام. بذكر كان في معنا سيدة اعتقلت بس لأنه والدها كان معارض، بس المؤلم بقصتها أنه اعتقلت من الشارع وكان معها طفلين. هدول الطفلين تركوا بعد ما أخذوها، تركوا لوحدهم. كان في بنت عمرها 2.5 وصبي عمره 6 شهور. كانت كل ما تسأل شو صار بمصير أولادها يضربوها. كانت تعاني الليل كله وتبكي بس لتعرف شو صار بأولادها. طبعا نحن ما كان يطلع بإيدنا شيء، وحتى هي فجأة اختفت وما بنعرف لوين أخذوها. أفرجوا عني، بس كانت الصدمة لإلي إنه لما عرفت إنهم كانوا عم يتواصلوا مع أهلي ويطلبوا منهم بدل مالي مقابل إخراجي من المعتقل، أو رح يحولوني على معتقل ثاني في الشام. طبعا والدي دفع مبلغ كتير كبير لحتى يخلصني منهم، وحتى ما يصير فيني مثل ابن عمي اللي أخذوه ب 2014 وانفقد ولحد الآن ما بنعرف عنه شيء. يعني أنا ما نلت العدالة، أنا اندفع ثمن خروجي. وهذا الشيء عم بيصير كتير بسوريا، يتم استخدام المعتقلين كمورد مالي للنظام. خرجت لأبدأ المعاناة الأكبر مع المجتمع. كانت مرحلة كتير صعبة بسبب نظرة المجتمع للمرأة المعتقلة. طبعا مو كل المجتمع، بسبب نظرة قسم من المجتمع للمرأة المعتقلة ووصمة العار التي كانت لاحقها، عكس الرجل اللي كان يخرج من المعتقل وهو بطل. بس بالمقابل كان في قسم دعمني ووقف معي، وكانوا أكبر دعم وأهمهم هني أهلي اللي كانوا سند لإلي، سند بقويني وبخليني أمتلك إرادة كبيرة. صح عانيت من المجتمع، بس كنت أستمد القوة من أهلي. كتير من المعتقلات تعرضوا لظلم كتير كبير، أبشع من بعد ما طلعوا. واحدة من المعتقلات واجهت مشاكل مع أولادها الشباب اللي كانوا عم يشعروا بالعار على حد وصفهم ووصف المجتمع. وواحدة كمان كانت معي بنفس الغرفة، لما خرجت أقرب الناس إلها اللي هو زوجها نبذها وطلقها. يعني ما كفاها الظلم اللي عانته وعاشته بالمعتقل، لحتى لقت ظلم أكبر لما خرجت من المعتقل. وكمان كان في سيدة لما خرجت من المعتقل عاقبوها أهل زوجها بحرمانها من كل شيء، مع أنه زوجها كمان كان معتقل. هاي معاناة بعض المعتقلات في المجتمع، ولسه في كتير ما حكينا عنهم. أنا بعد ما رجعت على بلدتي ومريت بظروف النزوح وفقدان الأهل، الحمد لله قدرت أستقر وأبدأ من الصفر، وبدأت أشتغل على نفسي وطور إمكانياتي ومتجاهلة كل الضغوطات اللي مريت فيها. بعدها قررنا أنا ومجموعة من الناجيات اللي كانت معاناتنا وحدة ومأساتنا بالماضي جرح ما بينتسى، إنه نشكل رابطة تجمعنا وسميناها رابطة ناجيات الداخل، من أجل التعريف بقضية الناجيات من العنف ومشاكلهم ومتطلباتهم وشو أبرز الصعوبات اللي عم يعانوا منها، ومحاولة تمثيلهم في المحافل الدولية والإقليمية والمحلية، ومحاولة استصدار قوانين تنصفهم وتعيد دمجهم بالمجتمع. يعني الهدف الأساسي من الرابطة هو تطوير وتمكين الناجيات سياسياً ونفسياً واقتصادياً ليقدروا يرجعوا يعيشوا حياتهم بشكل طبيعي ويكونوا جزء من الحل. الناجيات ما زلنا ضحايا ولم ينصفنا بعد، والأولوية الآن دعم الأمم المتحدة لتخصيص الجزء الأكبر من صندوق مساعدة ضحايا التعذيب للناجيات والناجين وأسر المعتقلين وتمكينهم. كناجية ندعم المطالبات إنشاء آلية مستقلة ذات ولاية دولية لكشف مصير المختفين قسرياً والإفراج عن المعتقلين، آملاً بتغيير حقيقي ودعم حقيقي. العودة لك سعادة السفير.
Thank you very much, Malaka. Thank you very much for telling us your story, but also impressing us with the strength and the work that you've done since you were released yourself to help also others and through the work of the League and trying to rebuild them, but also using this to remind us of the importance of doing whatever we can to help those who are still detained and very often bearing from families know very little about what their situation is. Thank you very much. Next speaker is Hala Al-Kayal. She's an activist residing in Turkey. She's a graduate of French literature and an MBA, and she's been working in the field of humanitarian assistance since 2013. They're almost the beginnings of the conflict in Syria. So Hala, please, you have the floor.
شكرا جزيلا. مرحبا جميعا. أنا هلا الكيال. بوجودي هنا في هذا الاجتماع أرغب بمشاركة قصة أخي أنس الكيال، مهندس كهرباء وإلكترون من مواليد 1982. كان يحضر للمراحل الأخيرة لإنهاء رسالة الماجستير. في عام 2013 قام بزيارتي في تركيا قادما من حلب بسوريا. حاولت إقناعه بالبقاء، ولكنه بعد 3 أيام أصر على العودة قائلاً أن سوريا وطننا ويجب ألا نتركها، وشجعه على ذلك أنه ليس له أي نشاط يزعج النظام. وبتاريخ 3 آب 2013 عاد إلى سوريا عن طريق باب السلامة. بعد بضع ساعات من مغادرته قمت بالاتصال به لأطمئن على وصوله، ولكنه لم يجبني، على الرغم من أن هاتفه ظل يرن طويلاً. بعد 3 محاولات تم إغلاق الهاتف واختفى أنس تماماً. لم يبقى سوى رقم هاتفه. أتصل به لساعات وما من جواب. في ذلك الوقت كانت عائلتنا خارج سوريا. قمنا بالتواصل مع عدد من الأشخاص الذين أخبرونا بأنه تم توقيفه من قبل شعبة المخابرات العسكرية، وأنهم يحققون معه، وأن الموضوع سينتهي خلال أيام. ومنذ ذلك التاريخ اختفى أنس. أخي الحبيب اختفى ولم أتمكن من سماع صوته ولا معرفة ما أصابه. المهندس اللطيف المحب لوطنه والعائد إليه ليساهم في كونه جزء من هذا الوطن. أنس الكيال غاب في غياهب بلد الرعب، اختفى ولم نتمكن من معرفة إلا الأخبار القليلة، وبعد دفع مبالغ مالية طائلة وبالعملة الصعبة لنحصل على أبسط معلومة تمنحنا الأمل. هل لا يزال على قيد الحياة؟ هو في سجن صيدنايا، لم تتم محاكمته بعد. هو حي يرزق أو لا نعرف عنه شيئا. 9 أعوام مرت وأنس لا يزال مختفي قسرا، وأمي التي لا تزال تأمل كل يوم بأن تسمع منه أو عنه تمضغ حزنها وحسرتها على ابنها الأصغر، وتقف عاجزة أمام شوقها لابنها الذي لا يمكنها ليس فقط سماع صوته أو رؤيته، بل ولا يمكنها معرفة مصيره. 9 أعوام مرت ونحن وكافة عائلات المعتقلين والمختفين قسراً نموت كل يوم موتاً بطيئاً. قصتي هي حقيقة كل عائلة سورية تعرضت لهذا النظام التعسفي والتعسف النفسي جراء اعتقالات التعسفية لشباب سوريا وزجهم في السجون دون محاكمات أو إخفائهم قسراً دون أي قيود. الكاردينال رئيس الكنيسة الروسية الذي بارك الحرب في سوريا واعتبرها جهاداً مقدساً، وبوتين يروج لمزاعم النظام بحماية الأقليات، وأنا مطلوبة ومهجرة، وأخي معتقل، وأهلي يعيشون الأسى واللوعة بانتظار خبر عن أنس، ونحن حالة من آلاف العوائل المسيحية الضحايا. فليتفضل بوتين والكاردينال ويخبرونا أين أنس الكيال، وما سبب إخفائه، ولماذا لم يفرج عنه. المحامي خليل معتوق أين هو؟ شباب ونساء وشيوخ وأطفال سوريا المعتقلين أين هم؟ خلف كل معتقل عائلة تتعذب بغيابه. أحذر من محاولات النظام خداع المجتمع الدولي بعمليات عفو مزيفة وبأعداد محدودة معظمهم محكومين جنائياً، ويبقي بالمقابل مصير مئات الآلاف مجهولاً، وينفذ عمليات اعتقال جديدة بأعداد مضاعفة. أطالب ببذل الجهود الكافية لفتح السجون، فحل قضية المعتقلين يتحقق فقط بفتح السجون أمام بعثات المراقبة الدولية لكشف مصيرهم والإفراج عنهم. عائلات الضحايا جميعهم ضحايا، ومن حقنا مطالبة الدول الصديقة والمنظمات المحايدة بذل مزيد من الاهتمام بهم، وجعل دعمهم وتمكينهم أولوية، وإشراكهم بالعمليات السياسية التي لا يمكن أن تكون مقبولة قبل كشف مصير أبنائهم وإنصافهم. فلا سلام قبل إنصاف الضحايا. شكراً. العودة لك سعادة السفير.
Thank you very much, Hala, for sharing the story of your brother and of your family. And we indeed, we can see once again the total arbitrariness of how this situation is, and how it can hit basically anyone who happens to be in the wrong place at the wrong time and end up years disappeared in detention without any information. And we thank you very much for sharing this heartbreaking story in many ways. The next speaker is Naja Malak, who's a Kurdish activist, head of the Kurdish Women's Union, and a founding member of the German Berry organization against violence. Please, Naja, you have the floor.
Thank you. أنا نجاح، مسؤولة الاتحاد النسائي الكردي رودوس، ابنة معتقل عند نظام الأسد منذ السبعينات. هربت من نظام الأسد ولجأت إلى أوروبا بعد أن تركت مشاريع الأمل للتغيير هناك، ولا تزال ترى العربات التي تشبه عربات النظام الأسد مصدراً للخوف والقلق من الاعتقال تلاحقني أينما ذهبت. وأنا حالة بين آلاف الحالات الكردية السورية، بعضهم خرج من السجون بعد اتهامهم بالإرهاب وتعذيبهم وابتزازهم، أمثال شيار خليل، شبال إبراهيم، وبعضهم ما زالوا مختفين قسراً مثل المحامي حسين عيسو الذي اعتقل وعمره 64 عاماً لمواقفه السورية السياسية في التغيير منذ 2012، علماً أنه كان مريض قلب، ولا تزال عائلته تعاني كل أشكال الابتزاز. فمنذ تشكل أول حزب كردي في سوريا إلى الانتفاضة الكردية التي اعتقل فيها آلاف الكرد السوريين، يعاني الكرد من الإجرام والاستبداد داخل سجون النظام. في عام 2004 أثناء الانتفاضة الكردية في سوريا اعتقل أكثر من 2000 كردي سوري، كلهم تعرضوا لانتهاكات جسيمة، وبعضهم قتلوا تحت التعذيب، وبعضهم اختفى ولم يظهر مصيره حتى اللحظة، وآلاف فروا من سوريا خوفاً من الاعتقال. ولا يقتصر الأمر على الكرد السوريين فحسب، بل كل السوريين كانوا وعاشوا المعاناة والاستبداد ذاته. فكلنا يتذكر ويعلم ما فعله نظام الأسد، الأب في سجن تدمر، وحملة الإبادة الجماعية التي نفذها بحق المعتقلين هناك، فضلاً عن المعتقلين والمختطفين من السوريين الذين كانوا يقولون لا لسياسة الأسد الاستبدادية. وما يزال انتهاك الاعتقال من جميع الأطراف إلى اليوم. عمليات الاعتقال التي نفذها نظام الأسد لم تقتصر على الانتفاضة الكردية فقط، فكل عام في كل احتفالية ثقافية أو مجتمعية أو قومية مثل عيد النوروز وعيد المرأة وعيد اللغة، تتحول هذه المناسبات إلى محاكم يعتقل على أثرها الكرد ويلاحقون من الأمن ويتهمون بالتخابر مع الخارج والعمالة والخيانة، ويتعرضون لأبشع الانتهاكات داخل المقابر التي تعرف بالسجون في سوريا. رغم كل المحاولات الدولية والقرارات والضغوطات، إلا أن عمليات الاعتقال لم تتوقف في سوريا، وقتل السوريين تحت التعذيب لم ينتهي، ولا يزال النظام يمارس ما كان يفعله في 2011 وقبل ذلك. فحتى قوانين العقوبات مثل قانون قيصر وتجريم نظام الأسد لم يخفف من هذه الجرائم. والمحاكمات الدولية في ألمانيا رغم أهميتها لم تحقق شيئاً، لأنها محاولات فردية وحالات مؤقتة، ولا يوجد حتى الآن إجماع دولي لمحاسبة هذا النظام المجرم على جرائمه. وعلى العكس من ذلك يتم التطبيع معه. السعي لملاحقة مجرمي الحرب الذين عملوا في صفوف نظام الأسد والأطراف الأخرى ولجأوا في مرحلة لاحقة إلى الدول الأوروبية، والاستماع لشهادات الناجيات وبناء استراتيجية متكاملة في المحاسبة لا تكتفي بمحاكمة المتورطين وفقاً للولاية الدولية لملاحقة مجرمي الحرب التي نؤيدها ونطالب بدعمها، بالإضافة لأولوية النظر في آلية جديدة تركز على محاسبة من لا زالوا يرتكبون جرائم ضد الإنسانية في سوريا، يشمل ذلك ضباطه الذين يستقبلون في المحافل الدولية بعدما أعيد تفعيل عضويته في الأنتربول، والنظر إلى قضية المعتقلين كأولوية لا يمكن تحقيق السلام والاستقرار في سوريا والمنطقة من دونها، حيث لا يمكن الحديث عن سلام مستدام في سوريا دون عدالة. العودة لك سعادة السفير.
Thank you very much, Najah, for sharing your story and also for making strong appeals to us in the international community, what we need to do, what we need to stay focused on. Very clear and very good. Thank you very much. Next speaker is Yasmina Benchi. She's a member of the SNC Detainee Committee. She's an advocacy trainer at the Tastakel Women's Organization. For those of you not familiar with them, I would advise you to check out the website. There's remarkable work being done there. Yasmina is also the CEO of Freedom Jasmine Human Rights Organization and a researcher on detainees issues and violations of women's rights at war. Yasmina, please, you have the floor.
شكرا جميعا. قضيتنا اليوم التي نتحدث عنها ليست بجديدة، لكنها ما زالت مستمرة. الاعتقالات التعسفية وحالات الفقد والموت تحت التعذيب آلام تعيشها مئات آلاف العائلات السورية. حتى العائلات التي تقوم بالسؤال عن معتقلها أو مفقودها تتعرض أيضاً للاعتقال التعسفي دون أي ذنب. وفقاً لإحصائية الشبكة السورية لحقوق الإنسان لعام 2011 فهناك نحو 149,862 شخصاً ما زالوا معتقلين منذ عام 2011 على يد أطراف النزاع والقوى المسيطرة في سوريا، معظمهم على يد النظام السوري، أي نحو 131,469 شخص، من بينهم 3,621 طفل و8,037 امرأة. الدكتورة فاتن رجب، أمل الصالح، سارة العلاو، والشاب صفاء غرة التي فقدت عقلها في المعتقل نتيجة التعذيب الذي مورس بحقها، ومثلهن العشرات من المعتقلات اللواتي كن بيننا في الأفرع الأمنية والسجون وتم نقلهن إلى أماكن مجهولة. نخشى أنها سجن صيدنايا العسكري الذي يتم فيه إعدام وتصفية الرجال والنساء أيضاً. ولا بد هنا أن نشير إلى حالات العنف الجنسي التي طالت النساء والرجال داخل السجون ومراكز الاحتجاز، والتي تبدأ بالانتهاك اللفظي والتفتيش الجسدي المهين للمعتقلين والمعتقلات من خلال تفتيشهم وهم عراة، إلى حالات الاغتصاب والتي يتم بعضها بأدوات حادة حسب شهادة الناجين والناجيات. كما تم استخدام النساء كسلاح حرب وزجهم في حالات النزاع، خاصة في عمليات التبادل التي زادت من حالات العنف والاعتقال والخطف. فالسجن عدرا المركزي والأفرع الأمنية ما زالت تكتظ بالمعتقلين من النساء والأطفال الذين يقبعون داخل الزنازين منذ سنوات، وما أن تتم عملية مبادلة صغيرة حتى يعتقل النظام السوري أضعاف العدد المفرج عنه لاستخدامه لاحقاً وللضغط به على الطرف الآخر. وفي سياق عملنا بالتوثيق يجب أن أنوه إلى أهمية عملية التوثيق وحملات التوعية لأجل توثيق العائلات لأبنائها وبناتها، من أجل الوصول إلى العدد الحقيقي لأعداد المعتقلين والمعتقلات والمفقودين والمفقودات، لأن العدد الذي تم توثيقه وتحدثت عنه في بداية خطابي لا يشكل الرقم الحقيقي، بل أن عدد المعتقلين والمفقودين ربما يفوق العدد الموثق بضعفين أو 3 أضعاف. وهنا أيضاً يجب الحديث عن معوقات التوثيق التي تواجهنا بسبب خوف العائلات على أبنائهم وبناتهم داخل السجون، أو خشية اعتقال باقي أفراد العائلة ممن تبقى منهم في مناطق النظام، إضافة إلى العادات والتقاليد التي تمنع الأسرة من الإبلاغ عن ذويها من الإناث خوفاً من العار والوصمة، فتكون أعباء إضافية على المعتقلة والمفقودة لتجردها من حقوقها دون أي رقيب أو حسيب. اليوم وكأخت معتقل قضى تحت التعذيب فقط لمشاركته بالمظاهرات السلمية، وكناجية من الاعتقال تغلبت على كافة ظروفها الصحية والنفسية وأصبحت مديرة تنفيذية لمنظمة حقوقية محلية، أود أن أشير إلى أهمية عمل المجتمع المدني بدعم الناجيات اللواتي يتعرضن للنبذ والوصمة ضمن مجتمعاتهن بعد خروجهن من المعتقل، ودوره في خلق بيئة تسمح لهن بالاندماج في المجتمع من جديد وممارسة حياتهن الطبيعية، من متابعة دراستهن وإيجاد فرص عمل لهن دون حساسيات وردود أفعال ونظرات مشبوهة مسبقة اتجاههن كناجيات. كما أننا ندعم عمل الآلية بالكشف عن مصير المعتقلين والمفقودين، ونؤكد أن أي حل سوف يقدم يجب أن يلحظ معاناة النساء وعدم ربط قضية المعتقلين بالمسار السياسي، وتعزيز مساهمة المجتمع المدني بعملية التوثيق لأهميتها ودورها بالوصول إلى الحقيقة. لك سعادة السفير.
Thank you very much, Yasmina. You make a strong case for the importance of documentation, for numbers, for identities, for information from families to families, so that they can know what the situation is, they can claim their rights and get support, and also for women who are released from detention, who are often stigmatized and who really need support, and where civil society has an important role to play. So lots of important and good messages there. Thank you very much, Yasmina. I'm happy now, and with very impressive time management by the speakers, and I'm grateful for that. We have almost an hour for free exchange and discussion among the participants. I have a number of pre-notified speakers, but hopefully there will be time also for others at the end. And if you want to speak, please raise your hand or put a message in the chat, and hopefully we'll have time for all those who want to speak to do so. First on my list of those pre-arranged speakers is Sarah Creedon, who is a senior advisor and multilateral team leader in the Office of Multilateral and Global Affairs in the Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights and Labor at the US Department of State. Sarah, very happy to have you with us. Please, I have the pleasure to give you the floor. Please, Sarah.
Thank you, and thank you for hosting this event, and thank you to Hind Kabawat and Elise Muffridge and the speakers today for their brave and tireless advocacy on this important issue. I'm also joined by several other colleagues from the Department of State. Many of us follow this issue closely as it intersects humanitarian, human rights, and political spheres. The main message I want to relay is that we hear you. We understand Syrian families are asking and deserve justice and answers. We support Syrian civil society as you continue to advocate and document abuses, but promoting accountability must be accompanied by also psycho and social support, legal support, and other programs that can help survivors continue to advocate for human rights, which is why we support the Survivors of Torture Initiative and some other programs. We also support the UN's ongoing documentation and accountability efforts, including, of course, the IIIM and the Commission of Inquiry, whose mandate was just renewed by the Human Rights Council last month. We co-sponsored the UNGA resolution last fall, 76228, which calls on the UN to conduct a study and provide recommendations on how to bolster the efforts around clarifying the fate of the missing, including detainees. And we underscore the importance of engaging with Syrian civil society on not just that report, but answers moving forward and how to get information. So it's a two-way street between the groups who have done such an excellent job of documentation. And we note that the UN High Commissioner's recent remarks, the General Assembly, and the COI's ongoing reporting includes a victim-centered approach and highlights the burden and the hardships faced in particular by women and children of the missing. Families of the missing are particularly vulnerable to extortion and threats and reprisals, and this should not be. Coordination, cooperation across the UN with Syrian civil society is integral to achieve progress on the release of detainees, enhance access to detention centers, particularly those where the worst abuses are happening, and getting information for those families. We have not forgotten about the aims of the peaceful protesters in 2011 who demanded justice and accountability and the end of torture. We underscore the urgent need for an inclusive political solution that includes the release of arbitrarily detained Syrians as agreed to in UNSCR 2254. And if I may ask a question to the speakers, I'd love to hear your views on how a new potential mandate could be the most effective in addressing all Syrians held. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Strong expression of support from the United States, very much appreciated. And we know you do a lot, and I think it really makes a difference. So really, thank you very much. Next speaker is Sinan Zeren, who is a counselor at the Mission of Turkey in Geneva. Sinan, please, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Ambassador. And I would like to, first of all, thank you and the SNC Geneva office for organizing this side event before the important Brussels conference on supporting the future of Syria and the regime. Very briefly, if I may. So it was really heartbreaking to listen different stories of disappeared persons in Syria who suffered from the atrocities of the regime. On the other hand, we had the privilege to hear from Syrian women from different backgrounds. And from our point of view, this is the image that we would like to see, in fact, a united Syria with all its rich cultural, ethnic and religious variety. And this is really important to show to the international community that Syrians want peace, they are united and they deserve peace, of course. And their fight is not sectarian or intercommunal or one community against another, but their cause is for the well-being of their people and their fundamental rights. And Turkey will continue to do its best to support Syrian people in their quest for justice and accountability. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sina, and also their strong support, and we appreciate all that Turkey is doing for Syria. It's a lot. You host many refugees from Syria, and you do a lot to help the Syrian people. So thank you very much, Sinan. Next speaker on my list is Lena Al-Husseini, who is the head of the Syria MENA program at the International Commission on Missing Persons, the ICMP. Lena, please.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you, colleagues and friends. On behalf of ICMP's Director General, I apologize she cannot be here today as she had an urgent family matter. So I will be speaking on her behalf. I'm just going to give a very short overview of ICMP. ICMP is the only international organization that is exclusively tasked to address the issue of the missing and detained. ICMP is actively engaged in developing institutions, civil society capacity, promoting legislation, fostering social and political advocacy, and developing and providing technical expertise to locate and identify the missing. The situation of missing persons involves multiple human rights abuses. Missing persons' rights and freedoms are jeopardized through discrimination, violation of their right to security, liberty, and their dignity, their right to freedom from torture, inhumane and degrading treatment, the right to life and family, as well as the right to recognition as a person before the law. Female-headed families of the missing and female detainees are especially challenged. You have the issue of stigma. You have many sort of cultural issues that they are challenged with. The laws in Syria are not in their favor. So female-headed families of the missing need special attention and a very sensitive approach to help level the field and ensure that their voices are heard equally and their rights are respected equally as men. I mean, part of international human rights law is the right to equality and non-discrimination. So ICMP has been working and has been truly informed and led by female civil society leaders, female-headed families of the missing, as well as female former detainees. And the more we are working on this issue, the more we learn that we have to have a very sensitive approach that's really to understand it's victim-centric, as well as involving cultural humility in the approach. And the most help we have had is really being led by Syrian females and Syrian families of the missing, led by women. So I thank you for this opportunity to speak, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I don't want to take too much time. So thank you again.
Thank you very much, Lena. And I can testify, having recently met the Director General of ICMP, Catherine Bomberger, that she is personally very strongly committed to working and helping and doing what ICMP can do. And it's a lot because it's really an organization specialized and very much focused on the particular needs and the situation of missing persons. So thank you very much, Lena, for joining us. Very much appreciated. I now have the particular pleasure of giving the floor to Bahiat Hajar, who's a good friend, and I'm happy to listen to him today for a perspective from the ground. He is Executive Director of the Local Administration Council's unit, and knows a lot and has very interesting things to say always. So Bahiyat, please, you have the floor.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Carl. Thank you, SNC Geneva office for this invitation. I mean, there's no words to be said after hearing Malak, Najah, Yasmina, and Hala talking about their experience as survivors and as families of victims or detainees. Honestly speaking, every time we saw a report, yesterday I think you all reviewed the report of The Guardian, and we are shocked again and again, as if this is a surprise. We didn't know before that this is a systematic approach by the regime to execute civilians. These videos that were survivors as well to reach the audience to see exactly what was being done. The massacre that took place in 2013 in south of Damascus, that some of the state members in the EU considered Damascus as a safe place or city for the return of Syrian refugees. Those victims, 40 civilians, were executed in a very cold manners by officials, by officers of the Syrian Arab Army, the same country that we are hearing voices calling for normalization with the same regime, with step for step, like considering releasing some of the detainees as a step that needs to be awarded by the international community or to be paid back. Brussels conference in a few days would be talking about the future of Syria. There is no future of Syria unless the truth of these detainees is uncovered. The right for the families to know what happened to their family members is needed, is the priority of any conference or meeting about Syria. We wish all the best for the coming conference, but this should be always a priority. And I'm really happy to attend one of the first side events to be on this topic. This important topic should be always on the top of the list of any discussion about the future of Syria. Early recovery should start from the recovery of the survivors, of the families of detainees. It's not about the destroyment, about the buildings or the stones. It's about human beings. The Syrian conflict at the first place is not a civil war. It's a human rights conflict. It started basically with detainees for opinion detainees at the first place. Thank you so much. My only recommendation is that to always consider Syria as non-safe place for return, for reconstruction, for early recovery, unless there is really serious step to release what's the rest of detainees that are still in the Syrian prisons. Thank you. Over.
Thank you very much, Bahiyat. Yes, I think we've seen the article in the Guardian, and it's a reminder of what we are dealing with and what is still very much unchanged and the same when it comes to the behavior of the regime in Damascus. It has not changed one bit since, and it continues. Several of you mentioned it, and harrowing reminders will continue coming, unfortunately, until these things change. And you make a very good point, Bahiyat, about early recovery. It's about people in the first place, not about buildings only. So thank you very much for making that strong point. Thank you very much, and I'm very happy to see you. The next speaker is Fernando Travesi, who is the Executive Director of the International Center for Transitional Justice. Very happy to have you with us, sir. So please, you have the floor. Fernando, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for passing me the floor, and thank you very much for the invitation. Regards to everybody, and good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. I could not agree more with the last intervention. So I would only say very briefly that ICTJ, the International Center for Transitional Justice, we've been working with Syrian organizations for many years now. And really, one of our latest joint projects that we have with them, it's called the Bridges of Truth, and it really focused on the topic we are discussing today, on the challenges that the families of the missing and the detainees faced on their daily lives. We work very close also with the SNC, and I want to thank them for the invitation and congratulate for their work, trying to engage policymakers to understand how important it is to include these issues and transitional justice issues in general in the negotiations happening in Geneva as part of the agenda. And we also try to introduce concrete measures and tangible solutions that can have some impact in the lives of the families. The topic of the missing is something that is at the core of our work in ICTJ. It's something I believe is at the core of transitional justice itself. And in Syria, it's something that, as we are hearing and as we all know, it has affected practically every family. And we know it has a higher effect on Syrian women who were left to deal with the many consequences of the forced disappearances. And this is something happening in Syria, and tragically, we've witnessed that all over the world. So this is not a new phenomenon. That doesn't make it at least easier to be solved. And it's not a tactic that regimes, the Assad regime and other regimes around the world, are using to extract information or something. It's an especially tactic designed to break the population, to control the population, to break the Syrian people as human beings, to exert control on them and their families, and to erase every possibility of having a political opposition and therefore a free democracy. So this is a main tool of oppression in Assad's regime and in many other countries. And that is why it's so important to tackle and address them. And it starts by solving the individual cases that are now missed or disappears. The right to know the fate and whereabouts of someone who has been arrested, detained, or forcibly disappeared, is as basic as the human respect and human dignity. And I think today there is a bigger responsibility on policymakers, especially in the Western capitals, to use the leverage they have to ensure, as we are hearing now in the intervention before me, the justice for the Syrians and justice for the Syrian women and justice for the Syrian families of the disappeared is the cornerstone of building a new state and bringing some justice. We believe that together and with the guidance of the Syrian civil society engaged in this work, we really can work together to support the families in their quest of truth. Syria needs a pathway to transitional justice in order to make some progress, a way for the country to emerge from decades of conflict and repression and address the systematic human rights violations that occurred during the war and before that. And impunity has so far reigned supreme over accountability. And if we want to see any progress, if we want to see any return, if we want to see any justice, we really need to bring this justice to the families of the disappeared. Policymakers are gathering in Brussels next week, and we must work to hold perpetrators to account. And we really need to establish all these coalitions and partnerships that we see here today to leverage our collective actions and to bring some concrete action. So we are very happy and honored to be able to be part of this platform and to support Syrian families, Syrian societies, and Syrian victims, and to be able to amplify their voices in every possible platform and to keep working with them tirelessly for justice. So thank you for giving me the floor. I stop here. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Fernando, for your intervention and also for all the work that you do, and also for reminding us again that it's indeed the women, the girls who suffer the most from disappearances. We heard it in the testimonies today. We see that this meeting is focused on this because it reflects reality and indeed heartbreaking stories from them. Importance of building a new society on the basis of justice, on the basis of accountability, and I think this has been the main message of this meeting so far, and it's really a strong message to take with us to the conference. Thank you very much, Fernando. Next speaker is Abdul Jalil Al-Shakai, who is a Citizenship and Civil Society Program Manager at the Syrian Center for Media and Freedom of Expression. Abdul, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Thank you, SNC. And no more can be, hi everyone. Sorry, no more can be heard after the stories of Anas Kayyar, Khalil Matou, Shiar Khalil, so Fatin Rajab, and more victims and survivors in Syria. But just to ask this question, what if justice wasn't achieved in Syria and the voices of the victims were silenced? For the victims' families and civil society, it's of the utmost importance to move toward the practical steps based on the values and ethical issues related to justice and human rights that we've discussed within 10 years. Victims and survivors are the cornerstones of the civil society effort to reveal the fate of the disappeared in Syria. Last year, we worked along with the civil societies and human rights defenders and the victims' families associations, just practical scenarios for revealing the fate of the disappeared in Syria. And based on the advocacy of the civil society and the resolution of November 21st, which is released by the United General Assembly, we drafted a study on an independent international mechanism on missing and possibly disappeared persons in Syria. Actually, we submitted the study last March to the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. I have five main points I would like to concentrate on this conversation. The first one is the victims are from all components of the Syrian people. They suffer from the atrocities of the relation. And search and find the truth is a strategic action that doesn't wait for political solution. In addition to revealing the fate of the missing in the heart of the justice process in Syria, and every day that passes without answers, actually it leaves thousands of detainees suffering in deplorable conditions to leave their family members waiting for no answers. Actually, there is no sustainability in Syria, and that's what we believe in SCM. There is no sustainable peace in Syria without solution that respects the demands of the victims and their families. And we took the step last month, as I mentioned, and we believe that the mechanism is the path to uncover the fate of the missing, which is extremely important. I'll be so happy to share the draft study kit to get more feedback from you as well after this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Abdul. Indeed, I think that this is an important study, and I'm sure there will be a lot of interest. So if you can make that available, this will be very much appreciated. Thank you much for sharing this with us. The next speaker is Yasser Farhan, who's a member of the SNC Legal Office in Geneva and president of the Mizan organization. Yasser, please, you have the floor.
شكرا جزيلا سعادة السفير. قبل شهر من الآن أصدر مرسوما مضحكا مبكيا ضمن سلسلة إجراءات يروج نفسه من خلالها وكأنه يستجيب للطلبات الدولية. الأمر الذي دعاني لمشاركتكم خلاصة تحليلي للمرسوم. من الناحية النظرية يخلو المرسوم من أي نص يتيح لجهات الرقابة الدولية دخول السجون السرية والعلنية، ولم يرفع النظام تحفظاته على اتفاقية مناهضة التعذيب، سيما ما يتعلق منها بتمكين اللجنة المعنية من دخول السجون. لم يوقع على اتفاقية منع الإخفاء القسري بوصفه أحد صنوف التعذيب للمعتقلين والعائلات، ولم ينص على مسؤولية القيادات الأمنية عن أفعال الأفراد وفقا لمبدأ العلم الظني، ولا على المسؤولية الجماعية لحكومة النظام عن تعذيب الضحايا. يريد حرف التوصيف من جرائم ممنهجة كما هو الواقع إلى تجاوزات فردية يحملها لعدد من عناصره. وأيضا لم ينص في نص المرسوم على وجوب نظر المحكمة من تلقاء نفسها في جرائم التعذيب. من الناحية العملية ومن خلال أعمال الرصد والتوثيق التي نقوم بها نؤكد استمرار الأسد بتنفيذ حملات اعتقال تعسفية جديدة، وبالاستمرار في ارتكابه جرائم ضد الإنسانية، باستمراره معتمدا في ذلك استراتيجية أساسية يحكم من خلالها سوريا: لا ثقة بمراسيم الأسد. النظام لا يغير سلوكه، وندعو الدول الصديقة لإنشاء تحالف يلزم الأسد باحترام القرارات الدولية تحت طائلة اتخاذ إجراءات عقابية لإنقاذ المعتقلين من جرائم الإبادة وإنقاذ قيم ومصداقية العالم الحر. العودة إليك سعادة السفير، شكرا جزيلا.
Thank you very much, Yasser, for reminding us also of the legal pathways and the legal obligations and the opportunities to hold Syria accountable, to hold the regime accountable for its crimes. There are a number of initiatives in this field, and we are grateful to those who are pursuing them, including some of our EU member states. And all of this is important. I think all avenues should really be pursued. So thank you very much for that, Yasser. Next speaker is Tariq El-Kurdi, who is also a member of the SNC Legal Office, and I believe member of the Constitutional Committee for Syria on behalf of the SNC. Tariq, please, you have the floor.
شكرا جزيلا سعادة السفير. السيدات والسادة، تحية طيبة. في الحقيقة من الصعب الحديث بعدما تحدث به الزميلات العزيزات عن معاناة شخصية عاشوها وما زالوا هم وعائلاتهم، ولكن علينا الاستمرار في النضال والاستمرار في المحاولة. نجتمع اليوم للتذكير بقضية المعتقل والمفقود في سجون نظام الأسد. منذ ساعات وقع السوريون ومعهم الكثير من أحرار العالم تحت صدمة التقرير حول المجزرة التي ارتكبتها قوات الأسد في حي التضامن جنوب العاصمة دمشق في ربيع 2013. ذلك التقرير الذي نشرت الخبر عنه صحيفة الجارديان، وكتبت صحيفة الجمهورية تقريرا مفصلا حول ملابسات المجزرة وشهادة الشهود، ومن ضمنها اعترافات المتهم رقم 1 في المجزرة. ما جرى في حي التضامن هو نسخة مصغرة مما جرى ويجري في سوريا كلها: اعتقال مدنيين أبرياء بشكل عشوائي، نساء ورجال وأحداث، تعذيب ثم إعدام ميداني، ومن ثم حرق جثث الضحايا ومحاولة طمس معالم مسرح الجريمة لإخفاء الحقيقة. ولكن شهية القاتل السادي للدم تدفعه لارتكاب هفوات، فقد وثق المجرم جريمته بالصوت والصورة، وما زال إلى اليوم يتفاخر بجريمته ويتباهى بأنه قتل جيرانه وأبناء الحي الذي تربى وعاش فيه. إن المجزرة الصادمة في حي التضامن ليست إلا محاكاة لجرائم تنظيم داعش التي ارتكبها في العراق وسوريا من إعدامات جماعية وتصوير وتوثيق تلك المجازر. ملف الاعتقال والتغييب القسري في سوريا هو ملف إنساني فوق تفاوضي كما عرفته القرارات الدولية، وعلى رأسها القرار 2254. فلا يمكن بأي حال من الأحوال مقايضة حياة المعتقلين وعذابات أسرهم وأحبائهم بمنافع ومحفزات اقتصادية يمكن أن يستفيد منها نظام الأسد. ومن غير المقبول أن يقبل أو يرضخ المجتمع الدولي لابتزاز يمارسه نظام الأسد في ملف المعتقلين. علينا أن نقول بصوت موحد لهذا النظام: كفى تلاعب وكفى استغلال لعذابات الشعب السوري، وأن عليه الإفراج الكامل غير المشروط عن المعتقلين كافة وكشف مصير المفقودين. ومن هنا نجدد نداءنا لكم بضرورة الضغط على داعمي نظام الأسد في مجلس الأمن حتى يتسنى إصدار قرار بإحالة ملف انتهاكات وجرائم نظام الأسد إلى المدعي العام في محكمة الجنايات الدولية. السوريون والسوريات ينتظرون العدالة للجميع حتى نستطيع فعلا طي صفحة الماضي، حتى يطمئن اللاجئ للعودة إلى وطنه، حتى نستطيع بناء وطن حقيقي للجميع يسوده العدل والحرية والديمقراطية. شكرا جزيلا لوجودكم وحسن استماعكم. إليك سعادة السفير.
Thank you very much, Tarek, for your statement. Indeed, we are moved and heartbroken really from the stories. But it's true that our work must continue. You do important work in the SNC and the Constitutional Committee. You remind us of the path through the Security Council. We, as European Union, we have been advocating for a long time already the referral of Syria to the International Criminal Court in The Hague. We know why this has not happened, but I think it's a position worth restating, reminding us all of, and which is the rightful place also for those who not only commit crimes of the type you mentioned, but also brazenly brag about it. And so it's not just impunity, it's really a blatant abuse of going much even beyond the impunity in the most unacceptable manner. So thank you very much for reminding of this. I have a request from the floor now. I'm very happy to give the floor therefore to a gentleman with the name mhr.org. If you can present yourself, and I'm happy to give you the floor, please.
مرحبا جميعا. أولا أرسل تحياتي للسيدات والسادة والسيد سعد السفير. أنا محمد خطاب، الممثل عن MHR، منظمة ميزان لحقوق الإنسان. عندي سؤال حول البند 12 من قرار مجلس الأمن 2254 الذي يكلف بموجبه دول الفريق الدولي بدعم سوريا باستخدام نفوذها على الفور من أجل الإفراج عن أي معتقل تعسفي سيما الأطفال والنساء. نستطيع سعادتكم عن حجم النفوذ المبذول لتحقيق هذه الغايات، عن كيفية تجسيد نفوذ الدول العظمى ودول العالم الحر لإنقاذ المعذبين في السجون، عن خطة استخدام هذا النفوذ لتنفيذ المهمة بفريق دعم سوريا وفقا لقرارات مجلس الأمن عن كيفية تنفيذ قرارات الجمعية العامة في المسؤولية الدولية لحماية الشعوب من الجرائم والإبادة ضد الإنسانية. وهل يمكن اتخاذ إجراءات تمكن هذه اللجان الدولية المختصة من الكشف عن كافة السجون والمشافي وأماكن الدفن الجماعي وغيرها بآليات تشبه عمل لجان التفتيش الدولية على أماكن تخزين وتصنيع الأسلحة الكيماوية؟ شكرا لحسن استماعكم وإليك سعادة السفير.
Thank you very much, Mohammed, for your question. I invite other speakers to maybe intervene to answer this question. I'm able to give you a few elements, but to help us on our way and also to hear from the important accountability work that's underway, I'm happy to give the floor to Linnea Arvidsson, who works with the Commission of Inquiry, the International Commission of Inquiry on Syria that was mentioned, and has done a lot of valuable work over the years. And has recently come with yet another very good report. So with thanks and with interest, Linnea, please, you have the floor.
Is the sound better now without my head?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Yes, much better. Yes, sorry about that. No, thank you so much, and thank you so much to the SNC also for organizing this event, and thank you Malaka and Hala, Naja, and Yasmina. This was incredibly moving to be hearing from you, and this is such an important event and a reminder for all of us. And as you know, from the Commission side, we have been investigating human rights violations committed in the context of detention since 2011. And in that process, gathering over 3,000 testimonies from victims and witnesses, and many of the most horrific atrocities. And our team is still doing that as we speak. And it's very, very clear in Syria that arbitrary detention has been deliberately instrumentalized by the government, but also by other parties in Syria to instill fear and suppress dissent among the civilian population. And less frequently in the past, but now we see it more and more also for financial gain. And two things are, of course, constant over these past 10 years. Tens of thousands of people had been unlawfully deprived of their liberty at any one time during the past decade in Syria, and including today. And the vast majority have been held incommunicado without any possibility of communicating with the family nor with a lawyer, as we also heard. And this is why the issue of detention is so intimately linked, of course, to the issue of the disappeared. And the fate of the tens of thousands of civilians who have been held arbitrarily by the government is still not known. Many are presumed to have been executed or buried in mass graves that we have investigated, while some are believed, and we hope they still are, held in detention, although we fear in inhuman conditions. And one of the aspects that I wanted to flag is that it's very clear in the investigations that we have undertaken that the government, and also, but to perhaps a lesser extent, other parties, are deliberately prolonging the suffering of the hundreds of thousands of family members by withholding deliberately information on the fate of those disappeared. And we are saying deliberately because all indications point to the fact that the government knows very well where their detainees are and who they are. They do keep effective registers. We know this from defectors. And we know that detainees are routinely transferred from one facility to another without their families ever being informed. And this is a national trauma that needs to be urgently addressed by action from both the parties and from the international community. One of the main recommendations of the Commission has been for many years, of course, that the parties must cease these types of violations and also allow access to all places of detention and not just to showcase places of detention. The government needs to provide access also to secret security places of detention. But what I really wanted to mention in the short time that we have is that to bring up, as some of the previous speakers also have done, the need to take action to try to clarify the fate of those missing and disappeared. And this has been a recommendation for by the Commission for a long time. And we were very, very happy to see the UN General Assembly last autumn adopt Resolution 76228, which has asked the Secretary General for a report to examine how to bolster efforts to clarify the fate and whereabouts of missing people in Syria, identify human remains, and to provide support to the families. And all of these three aspects are very important, of course, and OHCHR, the Office of the High Commissioner, is now preparing the study, and in doing so is meeting with a wide range of Syrian victims, survivors, and family associations, and other civil society organizations. And I would encourage those of you who haven't yet been in touch with OHCHR on this to be so. And from the Commission side, we're doing what we can to support this initiative. We stand ready to support such a mechanism with all the information that we have gathered over the past decade. And such a mechanism is needed as soon as possible, because experience globally indicates that the longer it takes to establish such a mechanism, the more difficult it will be to ever clarify the fate and whereabouts of those missing and disappeared. We know this from Latin America, we know this from many other continents where similar situations have occurred, but on a much smaller scale than Syria. And I wanted to finalize by saying that whatever shape the mechanism takes eventually, or the initiative takes, it's important for it to be obviously impartial, independent, credible, inclusive, accessible. It needs to be able to address missing persons from all parties of the conflict without any distinction there, and it must be able to ensure the participation of family members of those missing and disappeared, whether they are inside or outside Syria, and be accessible to them. Because, as we have said from the Commission, the families are also victims, and such a process must ensure not only that they are supported, but also protected in terms of their security and safety, which we know all too well is not a given. Anyway, I'll stop there. Thank you so much. Thank you. Over.
Thank you very much, Linnea, and through you, all the colleagues working for the Commission of Inquiry and for continuing the important work that you do. It's really impressive what has been achieved over the years, and with many good reports, many good recommendations, and a lot of work for the international community to take forward. Some of it is easy to do, some of it is more difficult, but it's no less important. So thank you very much. We have a few more minutes for interventions from the floor, if there is a wish. So if you can raise your hand, maybe that's the easiest. I apologize if there are requests in Arabic in the chat. I'm not able to read them. I must confess. But if there are others who would like to take the floor now, we have a few more minutes before we give the floor to Alice Moufrey, who will give us the recommendations of the SNC Detainees Committee. If I may, while you are reflecting on this, ask or to give also from our side some elements of response to the question from Mohammed Khateb about what is being done. I mean, there is the appeal indeed in Resolution 2254.12 to support and make sure that the issue of detainees is part of the political work. We know that the Special Envoy is personally quite strongly committed to this. He is raising it. Of course, the progress in this is not, we can't really speak of a breakthrough. We know that in the Astana format, there are meetings on missing persons, detainees, and abductees, as they say, but also that so far what this has produced is much more looking like prisoner exchange, military between militaries rather than anything else, unfortunately, and it's not what is foreseen in the resolution, and it's not what is needed for Syria, as we know. So the short answer is not enough, and we need to do more. There's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of good recommendations, but this is a fight that is not yet won, and we need to continue. I think this is the answer, and maybe this is can give us some meetings like this, I think, give us a renewed energy to take this forward. I understand that Fernando wants to come in again and make a second comment. So Fernando, please.
Thank you very much. I just want to make a follow-up comment, taking your invitation to speak from the ground in perhaps a broader issue related to what we are talking about, a broader issue in the run-up of the Brussels conference next week. We all understand that the Syrian conflict has been dragging for so long, and we also understand that now the political attention, the resources, and the political energy is shifting to the Ukraine war, the war on aggression in Ukraine, which is something that it becomes to the political agenda, and there is nothing we can do about it because it's also an issue that deserves a lot of attention, resources, and importance. So I just want to underline that I think it's very important to connect the two conflicts and how the impunity that we've been witnessing in Syria for the last 11 years is playing a role in the war in Ukraine now, and had been we, the international community, more forcefully demanding for impunity or bringing impunity to the Syrian conflict, I think the Ukraine situation would be slightly different as of today. I also think that in Ukraine, there is going to be similar problems with missing detentions, arbitrary detention, missing people and disappeared. And I think that as opportunistic as it might sound, I think in the conversations about Ukraine, we really need to make connections with the Syrian situation and also others to avoid shifting attention and leaving things behind and fully focusing on other conflicts and trying to connect the dots. That in this particular case, and considering how the Syrian conflict and the Ukrainian war is being developed and happening, I think they are very much related. So I just want to put that on the ground as a policy discussion also for the Brussels conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fernando. Indeed, I think those of us who have worked on the Syria conflict, we have a certain feeling of déjà vu when we follow the situation in Ukraine. We see the same spokesman from the Minister of Defense in Moscow saying the same things in the same way, and it's the same lies, frankly speaking, again and again. And unfortunately, it seems that the military tactics, the military means are very much the same. The methodology is the same. The targeting of the civilian population is the same. And the disappearance and the total disregard for civilian life is the same. And I think this is really an important point because unfortunately, we risk seeing the repetition of this in the future also. And I think this is an important point, and why impunity needs to be addressed not only now, but also for events in the past as a way of preventing further abuses in the future. So thank you. This is, I very much agree with you personally on this. Is an important point. Now, thank you, Fernando. Thank you for all the statements. I have the floor, a pleasure now, as I said, to give the floor to Alice Moffret, who is a stalwart of the SNC, and very happy to have you with us, Alice, and for your work. She is the head of the SNC Detainees Committee and a founding member of the Syrian Women's Movement, and a political refugee living in Germany, who will give us the recommendations and the next steps for this meeting. So Alice, with great warm greetings to you, and very happy to see you. You have the floor.
شكرا كارل، وشكرا لإدارة هاي الفعالية وبعد زمان ما التقينا، وشكرا لحضور جميع الدوليين الداعمين لقضيتنا والأصدقاء اللي عم نشتغل معهم، وشكرا لحضور السوريين والسوريات بشكل خاص. بالطبع أنا ما رح أقدم التوصيات 1 2 3، ولكن هناك العديد من الأمور التي أريد ذكرها للتأكيد على ما ورد في خطابات الجميع. بالطبع نحن اليوم نجتمع مجددا حتى نسمع أصواتنا بتنوعها وبهويتها السورية التي وحدتهم المعاناة، علها طبعا تحدث فرق للضغط من أجل تحقيق إرادة دولية تعمل على مسار حل جذري لقضية المعتقلين والمختفين قسريا. هذا الحل يجب أن يتم استثماره في عملية السلام كخطوة أولى في تحقيق العدالة للضحايا وعائلاتهم. هذا ما تم التأكيد عليه في المؤتمرات السابقة في بروكسل حول دعم مستقبل سوريا والمنطقة. تم التأكيد على هذا، وبالتالي يجب أن نعمل مجددا بمشاركتنا وتشاركيتنا معكم بأن علنا تساهم لجنة المعتقلين في هيئة التفاوض في التأثير بدعم التوصيات للعمل عليها ضمن خارطة الطريق. خارطة الطريق هذه يتوجب عليها أن تضمن حل سياسي شامل يخرج الشعب السوري من حالة الاستعصاء المستمرة، والتي تزيد عبء مسؤولياتكم فضلا عن المعاناة للسوريين. ذلك لن يتم إلا بالوصول لتحقيق تضامن دولي باتجاه إرادة دولية. هذه الإرادة أعتقد كما أشار فرناندو تحققت سريعا في الحرب الأوكرانية الروسية، وأعتقد يعني غابت عن سوريا الفترة الماضية عن العناوين الرئيسية، لكنها للأسف ظهرت فقط للمقارنة بالدمار الذي حصل في ماريبول وبين حلب، وبين السلوك الروسي المتعنت والتخاذل الدولي الذي لم يأخذ موقفا من أجل أن تتوقف روسيا وداعميها وخاصة الإيرانيين في هذا المسار. بالتالي ما هي التوصيات؟ دائما نحن نقول يجب استئناف مسار عملية السلام والالتزام بالخطوات الأساسية وعدم استثنائها، بمعنى تفعيل ملف المعتقلين تحت مظلة جنيف وفقا لمرجعيات مجلس الأمن، وخاصة القرار 2254 لما نص عليه بأنه بند ما فوق تفاوضي. وحكما هذا يجب أن يتطلب فصله عن المسار السياسي وفصله عن المسار العسكري، يعني عدم ربط أي مسار بملف المعتقلين أو بالتقدم في العملية السياسية المعطلة أصولا أو حتى عمل اللجنة الدستورية وهو متقدم على أي عملية أخرى. بالطبع أريد أن أعيد بأن النظام ماض بسياساته التي تتحدى الجميع، وكأنه بمنأى عن التعبيرات الدولية المنددة بانتهاكاته وتعطيله لهذه العملية. أصدر قانون رقم 16 الذي يجرم فيه التعذيب في سوريا، وبالطبع هذا القانون لا يحمل أي أثر رجعي لعقود من الانتهاكات، ضاربا عرض الحائط مهمة عمل اللجنة الدستورية والجهود السورية بتضمين العدالة الانتقالية في المضامين الدستورية التي تنظم وتدير المرحلة الانتقالية رغم عطالة اللجنة الدستورية، ولكن هو لا يعترف بها. تقرير الجارديان أخذ عن العمل القيم بعنوان قرابين التضامن، وأنا هنا يجب أن أقدم الشكر للباحثين السيدة أنصار شحود وأور أوميت أونغور، والذي نقله للعربية أيضا الصديقان مهند أبو الحسن ودمر سليمان، ونشر في موقع الجمهوري وأخذته عنه الجارديان. هو عمل سوري مضني كان له أثر الوقع الصادم، على الرغم أننا نعرف جميعا أنها جريمة تضاف للجرائم من قبل النظام. أيضا النظام ينكر الاعتقال والاختفاء القسري، لكنه أقر مجددا بمقتل 1156 سوري مختفين قسريا عبر دوائر السجل المدني، وكشف عن مصيرهم في شباط وآذار من هذه السنة. لم يقم بتبليغ أهاليهم أو تسليم جثامينهم، وعليه تبقى جريمة الاختفاء القسري مستمرة. نعرف أن هناك صعوبة لمجلس الأمن الدولي أن يعقد جلسة أمن تتعلق بمعالجة هذه القضية، أو اللجوء للفصل السابع من ميثاق الأمم المتحدة لحماية المعتقلين وإنقاذ من تبقى منهم من الموت، أو إيجاد آلية لإلزام النظام السوري بوقف التعذيب الممنهج في سجون الرعب بسبب عطالة مجلس الأمن وتقييده بالفيتو الروسي من جهة أخرى. لكن نحن هنا الآن نؤكد ونطالب بأن الجمعية العامة للأمم المتحدة يجب أن تستلم زمام المبادرة في هذه الحالة السورية واللجوء لتطبيق مبدأ اتحاد من أجل السلام. وهذا دوركم في مؤتمر بروكسل، كيف يمكن تقديم تصور من أجل دعم هذا الموضوع. كما أننا أيضا نتشارك العمل لحض الأمم المتحدة ودعمها بدورها ولا سيما لجهة التوصيات التي وردت في تقرير لجنة التحقيق الدولية المستقلة الخاصة بسوريا الذي صدر في الدورة 46 لمجلس حقوق الإنسان في آذار عام 2021 بمناسبة طبعا عقد على الاختفاء القسري الذي لخص الانتهاكات في سجون النظام وجميع أطراف النزاع الآن في سوريا. جميع أطراف النزاع لديها مقرات اعتقال، لديها انتهاكات جسيمة بلا استثناء، ولكن بالتأكيد على أنه لا يوجد نسبة وتناسب بينها وبين النظام، ولكن الانتهاك يبقى انتهاك. بالتالي هذا التقرير خرج بتوصيات في غاية الأهمية يمكن اعتمادها كأساس لمعالجة القضية فيما لو تحققت الإرادة الدولية وسارت في هذا المنحى، تفعيلا للجهود السورية من المجتمع المدني، من روابط الضحايا، حتى نحن الذين نعمل على هذا الملف بآلية سياسية. الطلب والتوصية الأساسية كما تحدث الجميع وكما يعمل الجميع الآن كار هي تشكيل آلية دولية مستقلة خاصة بملف المعتقلين تحقيقا للهدف الذي وضعته الجمعية العامة بعملية تنسيق وتوحيد الجهود العامة بقضية المفقودين، طبعا بمن فيهم الأشخاص الذين تعرضوا للاختفاء القسري. بالطبع الجميع متفق بأن هذه الآلية الموضوعية المستقلة أن تشمل كل الاختصاصات الضرورية لتوثيق وتنسيق كافة المطالبات المتعلقة بالمفقودين والمختفين، ويشمل ذلك الكشف عن مصيرهم، تفاصيل اختفائهم من خلال مهمات عمليات التحقيق التي يجب أن يكون لها الصلاحيات بالوصول لنتائج يتم البناء عليها. إضافة إلى ذلك إشراك الضحايا وروابط العائلات والعاملين في هذا الملف نتمنى أن تكون مختلطة، ألا يكون السوريين مجرد استشاريين في هذا المسار الوطني والدولي بجميع المراحل، بدءا من التخطيط إلى التنفيذ، المتابعة وتحديد المنطلقات والمرجعيات التي سيتم العمل عليها، وبالطبع تشمل ولايتها جميع الأراضي السورية. ودائما ما نؤكد مراعاة منظور النوع الاجتماعي، الجندر في جميع المراحل، لحظ احتياجات النساء وحقوقهم، ليس ذلك فقط، وأن يتم إشراكهم بالمناصفة. وقد أشارت لينا مشكورة لينا الحسيني بأن النساء هن قائدات في هذه المنظمات. الأولوية الأخيرة وبالنسبة لنا أيضا في مؤتمركم أن يخصص لدعم الأمم المتحدة الجزء الأكبر من صندوق مساعدة ضحايا التعذيب للناجيات والناجين وأسر المعتقلين وتمكينهم، وتحديدا روابط الناجيات في الداخل، وهنا أقدم تحية لملكة من الداخل. شكرا كارل وشكرا للجميع، وأعتقد أنه من الضروري أتمنى بأن نلتقي في المرات القادمة وقد خطونا خطوات عملية في هذا المسار. شكرا جزيلا.
Thank you very much, Alice. Indeed, you made very many good recommendations, many good, much work for all of us to take forward. Thank you very much. You've summed it up well. I don't need to add much more. Just a few headlines in a certain way from the meeting. I think we heard a strong call, I think, from all speakers for accountability and justice to be really at the center of all the work that we do. I think Bachert put it very well. We can speak of early recovery, but we don't mean buildings. We mean people, families, mothers, daughters, and this is really where the work starts. This is what is most important, and I'm very happy, therefore, we were able to organize this meeting, and particular thanks, of course, to Hind Kabawat, to Ablatif Dabag, all the SNC colleagues, the office who have initiated this. What stays with me was, I think, in particular, a strong call for an international mechanism. You repeated this and made a strong point, Alice. We heard it from many speakers. I think that we need to pay more attention to the issue of detention, of the disappeared, of the missing, There are efforts underway, we know, for accountability, for justice. There's important work being done by the Commission of Inquiry, by the IIIM, and now we look forward to the report from the Secretary General, as was mentioned, has been requested by the General Assembly. It's good, but obviously it's not enough. The behavior of the regime in Damascus has not changed. This is not a problem that is disappearing. It continues. More people continue to be detained and to disappear, and increasing the suffering of all the families, of all the people, all the relatives. So we need more action. There is, we heard important work that's being done, and the importance of documentation, important that this accountability issue is also part of the work of implementing Resolution 2254. It's there. It should not be put aside or compromised. We cannot make peace at the expense of justice and accountability. We cannot consider, in light of all of this, that Syria is a safe place for refugees to return to. I think this is very clear. There's no, unfortunately, really, there's no change in that respect. And I think we heard a strong general call, and maybe this is the headline for this meeting: no sustainable peace without justice and accountability, and a real effort to help give access to prisons, all places of detention, and all information for the families of the missing, the detained persons. It's really the most painful, as I said in the beginning, it's the most painful, the most dramatic, and we heard dramatic personal witnesses of this today. And I want to particularly thank Malaka, Hala, Naja, and Yasmina for their testimonies. This is, I think, what will stay with us from this meeting, and it gives us the energy that we need. And those of us who are preparing the speaking points and the briefings for our political leaders who will come to the Brussels conference, who will speak there, and I think we have renewed determination and energy from this meeting, and hopefully we will be able to make progress. And what I can say from our side is that we are strongly committed to this, and in no mood to give up. It's not always easy, and comparisons were made with Ukraine. We focus obviously a lot on Ukraine here. It's dramatic developments for us, but it doesn't reduce our commitment and our support for the people of Syria. If we don't get Syria right, we are, as was said, we risk seeing the repetition of this in other places, and this is also why this remains for us as Europeans very important. And really, thanks to all of you who participated. But as I said in the beginning, a particular thanks to the SNC. Now, the final word of information. We are, of course, organizing, or many of our member states, colleagues, organizations, friends are organizing side events. You find full information about all the side events ahead of the conference, and some actually even after the conference on the website of the 6th Brussels conference on the future of Syria and the region. There's also a program there for the Day of Dialogue, which is on the 9th of May. And as I said before, this is Europe Day. We dedicate this Europe Day this year to Syria, and I think that's a strong message from our end. And of course, you see the program there of the conference itself, and I really invite you to participate and benefit from these few days and these few weeks of strong focus on Syria. I think it's important that we keep following this closely. To already give you a little bit of a indication of how we from our side consider this to be an important issue, we will of course have in the conference itself, among the ministers, we'll have representatives from civil society who will report from the Day of Dialogue. So we'll have civil society speakers present, and we also plan to give the floor to the head of the IIIM mechanism, Catherine Marchiuel. Many of you know her. She does remarkable work, and as a sign, speaking among the ministers also in the conference itself, as a sign of where we would like the accountability work to be placed really at the center of the work that we do on Syria. And I think our determination to do so has been strengthened by this meeting, and I'm really very grateful to all of you for having participated, and in particular to all of you who work on these issues and who keep the fight alive and keep making progress and give us a renewed vigor and energy to continue doing so. With that, thanks to all of you. Thank you to you, Hin, to Alice, to all the speakers, to Tarek, all the friends of the SNC, all the colleagues, all of the countries who follow this, all of the Syrian activists in particular, of course, all of the civil society colleagues, and invite you warmly to really participate as much as possible and to help us make a small success. We are not yet at the big success for Syria, but we would like to make the Syria conference a small success by focusing attention and by continuing the fight that we need to continue together. So with that, thank you very much. I wish you a pleasant evening, and I hope to see you soon in any of the many other events that we're organizing. And again, particular thanks to the SNC office in Geneva for having initiated this, and again reminded us of how important it is that we stay committed to this. So thank you all very much, and wish you all a pleasant evening. Thank you very much. See you soon. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Goodbye.
يعطيكم العافية. شكرا جزيلا. Thank you, Carl. Thank you.
Thank you, Tarek.
شكرا للجميع.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Hind. Bye-bye.
شكرا.
هلو فاسيليا، كيفك؟ ايه الرابط شغال، نسكر الرابط؟